Hello everyone and welcome to another video about Audit One. We decided to change the format a little bit. Instead of just having David talk about the ISO stuff, we decided to make it a two-way conversation. And I assume you already know David, but David, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself again in case the people who are watching don't know you?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm David. I'm a co-founder of Audit One, responsible for the internal operations. I'm also certified ISO 27001 auditor. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have this conversation here with Mahdi and to shed some light more on the ISO standard and why are we actually talking about it.
All right. And in case you guys don't know me, I'm Mahdi. I manage the ecosystem and do a bit of marketing at Audit One. And as David mentioned, we're going to be talking about ISO 20701. So let's just talk about it. Let's see what is it, why companies should care about it, and how it is actually implemented. So, David, for someone who's never heard of ISO 2701 or 27K, as some people say it, what is it, just in plain English?
I would see it as it's some standard that dictates how you should do things. So I would call it maybe a playbook for protecting your sensitive information and just in general managing security risks. And I'm not just talking, about the IT security. I'm talking also about like physical security. So let's say it's a playbook for managing security. Yeah.
All right. So it's a playbook for managing security, and why does it matter? Is it just about compliance, or does it actually make companies more secure?
So, compliance and the whole certification is one of the parts, right? But the idea of the standard is kind of to give you the best practices of how you should make actually your company more resilient against attacks. So, it goes beyond compliance. It really improves the real world security posture of your company. And by implementing the standard, by implementing the best practices, it also helps to prevent breaches, ransomware, also insider threats. So it's definitely not just a compliance thing. It's really a system that helps you secure your business.
All right. So it's not only about compliance, it actually helps companies being secure. And let's imagine a scenario where a company ignores these practices that are within this ISO 27K framework. What's at stake if that happens?
So, in general, if company ignores security, then it is much more, it's exposed to a bunch of different risks, right? So from, let's say, financial penalties for not being compliant to damage reputation and losing trust of your customers, losing contracts through that. So it kind of like the standard itself is, let's say, as I said, a playbook, right? So it is just the best practices that you should implement. Not having the standard is, and like you don't have to have the standard. You can also just follow the best practices and thereby protecting your company. With the standard, it's kind of like a badge of honor, saying, okay, I follow the best practices. So that's why it exists. That's why you can get certified by the standard. But if you don't follow any security practices, well, then sooner or later you will probably face some kind of breaches, some kind of threats. You have a lot of unmanaged risks in your business. And all of this can cost you either reputation or financial loss, or even more from lawsuits to I think like the risks are never ending, so you can lose your company basically.
All right. So basically, it's not only compliance; it actually matters. And in case you don't follow it or things close to it, which are basically the best practices, as you mentioned, pretty much everything could be at stake, hypothetically, right? And I assume this is why also Audit One became ISO certified.
Exactly. So our idea behind why we got the certification is that we provide cybersecurity services. We educate people about cybersecurity, and so we also want to go as kind of set the example of how a company should, take care of their own security. It also allows us to talk to a bigger, let's say, enterprise clients, where we can directly show, okay, our processes and your data, if you're working with us, are secure, are on the highest level of also compliance. So the idea was to lead by example but also, structure our internal processes and be able to sell also to bigger enterprise clients.
And how do customers or partners react when you say we are ISO 27K certified?
I think it just it builds, I would say maybe even like instant credibility and some trust. It speeds up the due diligence of different sales cycles. So basically, what it does is you become a verified supplier, verified vendor for the other companies, and so they don't really need to do very lengthy, let's say, due diligence with you. They just take the certificate. And because of the structure of the certificate, because of the structure of the whole ISO network, they can trust that somebody did already the due diligence for them, and that we handle information security based on the, on the standard, based on all of the requirements. And so, yeah, there is like no need for further due diligence. So I think it's the instant credibility and trust that that you can kind of like feel once you get the certification.
All right. So now we know what this framework is and kind of why it matters, and what would happen if people don't actually follow the practices. Let's just break it down now and just look at how it works. So what are the main pillars of ISO 27K?
So, I mean, the main pillar is risk management. So basically identification of risks and then also threats in your company. With that, what is connected is also, some asset management. So to know like what risks you have, you also need to know what assets do you actually have. So you map out all of your assets that you have, all of the suppliers, vendors you work with, and then you also look at, okay, what are the potential risks maybe from working with these assets. You develop policies and controls. So basically you formalize your processes. It also helps you later, to scale up because you have set in stone processes that can grow with the company. And finally, there is some continuous improvement. So you do audits, you do recertifications, you need to update the system. And also, I mean, it's not just a system that you just build and then you get certified and then you forget about it. The system actually integrates directly into the company processes. So let's say you have a new employee, then you onboard the employee based on, let's say, a checklist that you developed. You have some policies for the employee that they need to formalize. You have some risks associated maybe with, hiring employees. So then you're treating the risks in a way that, they sign all of the important policies, thereby you kind of manage one of the risks and so on. So, with every change, with everything that the business does, you have the different systems in place so that you can manage all of the parts. Then there are like many more other pillars, like, we can consider HR as one of the pillars, also access management as another pillar. I spoke already about the risk pillar. Then we have the threat register as well, maybe as a pillar. So I think there are like many different parts of it, but let's say we have the risk management as one pillar, then policies as control as the second pillar, and then third pillar would be the continuous improvement.
Got it. And what's a typical journey a company goes through when they decide to start implementing ISO 27K?
It's a really good question, because I think it is a little bit, I think a lot of people struggle with, understanding what is ISO, how does it work, how much work do I need to put into it, and like, when do I actually get my certification and how much will it cost? It all starts with a gap assessment. So it kind of, you can either do it yourself, which is somewhat hard, or ideally you work with, let's say, a consultant that performs a gap analysis. Gap analysis, that means the consultant basically reviews what do you have in your company right now for policies, procedures that can be mapped to the ISO standard. And so he can tell you, or she can tell you, then what is missing in the information security management system. So basically the security system that we are building with the ISO standard. And based on this gap analysis, you can then go on and see, okay, what are the parts that I need to build, right? So for example, we had a bunch of policies ourselves already, but we were missing a lot of other things, like let's say the whole risk management was missing for us, for example, right? We had some access management already in place. So access management was kind of, not a gap, but risk management was a gap. So that's something we needed to develop. But let's say overall, the gap assessment identifies what is missing, right? But then when you're starting actually building and implementing the information security management system, or ISMS as we call it, you start with a scope. So basically defining what is going to be the scope of the management system. So which processes, maybe which branches, which business units will be part of the scope and departments. So you define the scope. Then you go implement the policies, you implement the controls. After you do all of this, you ideally train your staff so that everything that you prepared in the policies and controls gets implemented also into the day-to-day tasks. And then once you're ready and all of this is working for 2-3 months, ideally, you can go and do an internal audit. In the internal audit, it's just somebody internally, performing, kind of like checking whether all of the requirements of the ISO 27000 have been satisfied. And if you are passing the internal audit, or you just improve all of the things that are missing, you then do the external audit. And the external audit, or the certification audit, is then basically where the certification body comes in. So these are external auditors that are independent, and they will review your company and then basically decide whether or not you satisfy the requirements of the ISO standard, and they can issue you the certificate afterwards. So just maybe, to sum up, you start with a scope, defining what you are going to cover with the management system. Then whatever you decided to cover, you implement policies and controls for those things. You train your staff, then you do the internal audit, and then you get yourself certified. I know it's quite a lengthy process, right?
But like, long story short, it's like you start with gap assessment to see where you are, where you need to be, and then based on that, you get the scope of what things you kind of need to do in policies, etc. And then you do the building. Actually, after you build it, you do the internal audit. It's like kind of, let's say, a midterm exam where you kind of assess yourself to see where you are.
Yes.
And after, if everything is in place, you can go and do the final exam, where it's like the actual certification audit. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the longest thing that like the implementation is actually like where you spend, I would say 90% of the time. So like, these like internal, external audits are just, like these just short exams. But where you're learning, where you're implementing it, that's where you spend a lot of time. And also then training your staff takes quite some time, because everyone needs to, start thinking, in let's say a risk management way. So kind of, I don't know, like thinking about like, I have access to this system, somebody else could access it, maybe, not leaving papers on, not leaving your computer open, maybe not leaving just paperwork everywhere. So it's also, the employees need to be aware of risks and then behave in, let's say, risk mitigating way.
Got it. So they need to basically be risk aware and try to just mitigate it as much as possible through the best practices.
Yeah.
All right. So now we know the journey that a company goes through to become ISO certified from start to finish, and also why they need to do this and why it matters. And I assume you've been in this space for quite some time, so you might already know this. What are some common mistakes that companies make when they are starting out in this ISO journey?
I think, because it's called, like, the standard is for information security, right? And so it kind of like, I mean, even myself, I always associated it more with, let's say, IT and some, IT stuff. So what I feel like a lot of people think about ISMS is that it is just IT only project, right? Which is wrong. It's the whole company project, and it is not only about, IT security. It is actually about a lot of like, processes, HR, physical security. So yeah, I think that's one of the ways how people think about it. So I think that's one of the mistakes. And then also it's just when building the ISMS and when writing the documentation and everything, nowadays you can do a lot with ChatGPT, which honestly I think is really good thing, because if you know how to build something, you can, I don't know, record a voice memo for ChatGPT, explain your processes, explain different parts of how you handle different things, and you can use ChatGPT to just kind of put it into writing, put it into some document. But what I also saw is sometimes companies just, especially startups, they just overcomplicate the documentation. They overcomplicate their SOPs. They are basically writing SOPs as if they were like a 5,000 people company with many different like things in the policies that just need to be managed. And at the end of the day, it's clear if the company is like 20 people, right? They're not going to have the manpower nor the time to kind of do everything that they specify in their policy. So keep it simple, stupid, keep it really like just target it. Basically, whatever you are doing in your company, think about the process, write it down, think about how you can make the process safe, manage your risks in the most basic, simple way. And as you are going to grow, you will be identifying more and more risks, right? And so then you can go and you can tweak the policies, you can tweak your controls in a way that they satisfy the needs of much bigger company that needs to manage thousands of people. Yeah, so I think that's like a second big thing. Maybe last, and it's just because we were talking now a lot about documentation policies. I think for a lot of people, it's just creating some paperwork. And that's wrong. Like, it's not just paperwork, it's a living system, it's implemented system into your company. So that's I think that's the biggest misconception of what it is actually. Like, it is a system that is directly integrated into your core business processes.
Got it. So the biggest one, I guess, based on what you said, is people think it's just some documented piece of paper, not an actual live system. The other one is overcomplicating the documentation unnecessarily when they don't need to do so. And the first one was, what was it?
Treating it just as, IT project. So it's not just IT, it's the whole company.
Got it. And so I assume, based on everything that you've told me so far, if a company is really big and they haven't already done this or some framework similar to this, it's like the more components a business has and the more employees it has, the bigger it is, basically. It feels like there is a more bigger, let's say, surface of impact where different risks can arise. So if a company like, let's say, German company Siemens with like thousands of employees around the world, it has a large impact surface where anything can go wrong, right? And if you employ somebody new, let's say, in the company at a relatively high managing position, then that person has to spend like 3 months going through policies and reading them one by one. How does it work then in such a scale?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So no, they don't. They like talking like these big conglomerates and companies. They have whole departments, just focused on, let's say, information security, compliance, and so on. So ideally, what you have, and this is also like you are building this also for a small startup, is you have some kind of onboarding documents, some employee handbook. So it is basically, just compressed version of like, hey, these are the policies, this is how you should behave, kind of do's and don'ts, and what happens if you don't do what you should do. And so, yeah, you just get employee handbook, and then probably like, specific to your work field, specific to whatever you are doing, you will then have some additional policies maybe, and definitely there will be some like SOPs. So then, you just read those, but you're never reading everything. It wouldn't work, right? Like, you should concentrate actually on performing your work and not that much on, just reading some documents. So the idea of ISMS is also make it so that everyone can learn the basics and then, have specific detailed documents ready for those that actually need it. Whoever doesn't need it, don't bother them with that.
Got it. And my next question was, I wanted to ask, how long does it take for a company to get ISO certified? But I guess I already kind of know the answer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess this would kind of slightly become clear in the gap assessment part, where they see what things they need to implement, and it would vary from company to company, right? One company might take really slow, I mean, a really long time, and then one company might be really quick because they don't have many things in place, and it's like a simple business model. But how would you answer that? How long does it take for a company to do this?
I think like usually, and now I'm talking just about I would say like I'm talking about smaller companies, let's say from super small startups to 200 people company. I would say between 3 and 12 months, because everything that is then larger, with like 500,000 people, they're usually you already have, let's say, a person or maybe a small department kind of concerned with a bunch of things. I believe that most companies that are already this big have some have already a lot of processes implemented, but so kind of like for them maybe the gaps are lesser, but at the same time, because they have so many processes and it's so complex, it takes much longer to implement something, even though they have special departments for it. For smaller companies, it's a little bit easier because you have the decision makers usually directly involved in the process. You have the whole management in it involved. So I would say 3 to 12 months. Most let's say startups usually do it between 3 and 6 months.
Got it. And the longer it takes, the more it would cost the company, or not necessarily?
It all depends on you can build the system yourself, right? Like basically read up on it. You will find a lot of resources online as well on how to build ISMS. That's so kind of you can do it yourself. The other way to do it is hire a consultant that will help you. That will the first option costs you time, the second option costs you money. Then there is kind of the middle way option that's just hiring somebody into the team. Let's say if you're a 50 people company, maybe it makes sense to have somebody part-time or even full-time, just dedicated for information security and compliance. So that's the other thing. So yeah, I don't know. Does it answer your question?
I guess yes. So basically, you can do it fast and spend money, or you can do it kind of slowly but spend time, not that much money, or you can just have somebody, let's say one person who is a specialist in this field, where it's the middle ground. It doesn't take too long, but it's also not too expensive, as in going to a big consulting firm, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the price ranges, it's really hard to say. It also depends on how many gaps you have. So that's all. There's so many things that the price really then depends. It's case by case.
So if somebody calls today and says, "Hey, how much does an ISO cost?" The thing is, I think if they ask that, maybe these certification bodies have a specific price for the certificate. So maybe you go to TÜV in Germany and they say, okay, it costs 4,000 to do an audit and give you a certificate or fail you. But the part that costs more potentially is getting up to that standard of actually being certified, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, because there is just much more effort, right, into building the whole system. So for the certification bodies, I think there is a little bit easier to estimate it, and I would say you can kind of search up online. You will find some tables that say if your company has this many employees, probably then you need to do X amount of audit days, and then let's say you can calculate everything between around 3,000, 4,000 per audit day, and so there you can do the estimate of how much it will cost. For the implementation, I would say if a small startup around below up to 20 people comes and says we need ISMS, I would say consultation 10 to 20,000 maybe. I think maybe let's say 15,000 would be kind of what I'm gonna say. Of course, it can be much lower depending on whether or not they can cover all of the gaps. It also depends on what do you need from the consultant. Is it just tell you how you should build something and then just check whether or not you've done your homework, or do you actually want them to be involved and help you build some of the systems, help you I don't know, for example, do the vendor assessments, help with some of the risk mitigation strategies and so on. So there again, the cost can go much higher. But I would say if you're a small startup, you can get the ISO implementation with the certificate if you do a lot of work yourself for, let's say, 15,000.
Okay. And based on your answer, I guess the main factor that changes how much it costs, both the implementation aspect and also the actual audit, is the employee, like the headcount of the company, right? The more employees you have. And is this because like relatively, if a company has more employees, then it's bigger and it has more complicated systems, or is it just actually because like each employee needs to be sort of like interviewed or something?
Yeah, so I mean, you need to look at it from the risk perspective, right? The more employees, like you said, is directly related to more complexity, more different workflows. At the same time, each employee, let's say, is an entity that works and acts for itself. So kind of each employee is somewhat a risk for the company. So yeah, and it's just basically like there are some other standards defined for the certification bodies that tell certification bodies, how they should calculate basically the audit days, how long should the audit approximately last. So yes, this is one of the factors. Then you have also factors like business IT complexity. Then it kind of depends like if you fall under some regulatory requirements and so on that needs to be satisfied. So yeah, like there are other things that the price or like the audit days depend on, but I would say primarily it's the headcount. I think it's also the easiest one to to have. It's the easiest one to count, but then also you can count it in every company, right? So
and you can like have an estimation based on it, like easily can say, okay, roughly it's going to cost this much because you have these many employees.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
But I guess that's also a generalization. Like maybe there's a case where it's like 3 people, but there's such complex things that happen. It's like up and down, I guess.
Yeah, if it's like just, I don't know, 3 people, they really need to get the certification, but their processes are super complex, then, like, of course, the number of audit days will go up, so it will just take longer. The idea behind it is also, the auditor should have enough time to examine the implementation of the information security management system in detail. So I really need to see basically how do you handle different risks, whether or not you have proper controls in place, and yeah, whether or not you have all of the controls that the standard tells us to implement, whether or not you have it actually in there.
Okay, now this brings up another question. So this means if you actually do your homework, right, regardless of doing your homework properly, regardless if you do it within third party or you do it in-house, but if you actually build these policies and controls and everything really clean and easy to navigate, then it will lead to the audit days being less and it taking less time to actually getting certified and it costing less money, right?
So yes, kind of yes and no. Before the audit, right? Like, I don't know how the system looks like before the audit. What it will do is for the auditor, it's going to be much more easier to understand everything. I'm going to ask less questions. So yeah, like the chances of you passing the audit are just, I think a little bit higher, because for me, if I see like the policies is simple enough for me to understand right away, then I know also anyone else who's going to read the policy will understand how they should act, what the policy is about, and so for me it's kind of like it's really good indicator that this company, doesn't matter if they grow next year and they hire 100 more people, all the 100 people will directly understand how to behave, right? So it just gives me also the confidence that I know, they've done a good job. They didn't just, like put some stuff on a paper, but they really thought about it. They structured it well. And yeah, we don't have to spend that much time on these parts than on the documents. We can rather look into the system, for example, understand, how, like, see some of the processes, and yeah.
Got it. And so this whole thing is like an ecosystem, right? Where everything is interconnected to each other, and you have one like aspect that is about, like, for example, asset management, and then you have the policies, and then you have access controls, and these are all like connected to each other in a way that it makes sense. And I assume you cannot realistically do this, like, let's say with pieces of paper, right? You need actually tools to implement this.
Okay, yeah.
And what are the go-to tools for this? ecosystem, basically?
So without, naming all of the companies, you will find a lot of different tools that help you implement the information security management system. So we're basically, some of them are SaaS based, some of them are, let's say, just kind of Excel based things. There is what I would say is there is no need for you to, let's say, buy a tool. It can make your workflow easier and faster. At the same time, right, you are depending on some other system that might work you for now, but maybe if you build your own system with your tools that you already have, then you have much more flexibility. Usually, you understand the system in detail, and you can also scale the system, adjust the system as you need. So you can go buy. So talking about tools, you can either buy some tool that is kind of ready-made ISMS tool where you will have the risk management, you will have the vendor management, you will have your policies in there, you will have maybe somehow integrated access control, so everything will be in there. Or you can go and, for example, use tools like Notion, maybe some Atlassian products and build it yourself with those tools. So that's also possible. What I wouldn't recommend though is having Excel sheets for all of this, because it's also a valid way to implement information security. It's just, I feel like in 2025 we have so many other tools and so many other options that Excel sheet is a little bit too old school. It still works. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think you get much more flexibility maybe with using, some smart Excel sheets. Like, let's say Notion would be a little bit smarter Excel sheet, right? With many more other options in it. Same kind of, you can see Jira as, it's not Excel sheet, yeah, but you can build it with other tools that are smarter, let's say, than Excel, but kind of, still as customizable as Excel and not, ready-made solution that you just need to conform to.
Understood. So for a startup, basically, it's possible for them to use Excel to build it, but not recommended. It's a better practice to either use the in-house tools that they have that could be used for this, or just buy some tools that are specifically made for this. And the second category, the tools that the companies may already be using that could also be used for the information security management system. You mentioned Notion and Jira, right? I don't hear you. I think you're muted, David.
Yeah, sorry. So exactly. So you have, you kind of, what you need is, let's say, some ticketing system where you can create, tickets or tasks, or call it whatever you want, but basically smaller components. Let's say in one will be for risk register, other one will be for your suppliers. That will be also, kind of one database with different fields and with different entities in it. And then you need to manage your documents somewhere, right? So let's say for us, for example, we took the approach and built it completely in Jira and Atlassian, Jira and Confluence. So in Confluence, we have all the documents, and in Jira, we have all of the, let's say, systems like the risk register, the vendor assessment, the HR processes. And what is nice about this is actually, because we use Jira for our day-to-day tasks and for all the other tasks, is we can directly integrate it. We can just assign the tasks, and we don't need another separate system for it. So it's just connected with each other, and we can have also the improvement tickets for our ISMS directly in Jira, assign people to it. So I think it kind of reduces complexity of managing multiple different platforms for different things.
Got it. All right, so David, in our company, we've done this. We've built this sort of slightly in-house with the tools that we already had, as you mentioned, with the Atlassian ecosystem, Confluence for document management and Jira for the ticketing and etc. If another company would want to do something similar, because I assume this turns out to be not only better and more optimized than Excel, but cheaper than, let's say, ready-made tools, right? If another company wanted to do something like this, how do you think they would be able to do this?
Yeah. I'm like a couple of weeks ago, I started, recording short sessions where I'm showing how to build whatever we build. So you can head out to YouTube, to our YouTube channel. There you will see basically the whole series about this, where I will take you step by step, what I've built in Confluence, how to manage the things there. Then also in Jira, we will be building all of the components in there. And I think at the end, once I've built everything, because I'm building it actually from scratch, in completely new Jira project, then I will just publish this as well, so somebody can, also duplicate it right away. And if somebody has any questions, I would be more than happy to, answer them, help you improve the system, build on top of it. Yeah, like since I published this, actually, I had a couple of really interesting then also discussions with other people that reached out to me, said like, hey, we are also using something similar. So that was really exciting to me, because now I'm actually, I'm improving even our system based on, whatever I saw from the other companies using, building, having things in there. So my hope is that, in case somebody, what you ask, in case somebody wants to build this right away, that at some point there might be even like a small community, or people sharing their ideas and details on how to build it. For now, there is the project, or let's say the course that I'm publishing. So yeah, that's, I think, the best way.
Got it. So if somebody wants to save money and build it pretty much for free, or start with it for free, they can just start with that series. But the thing is, this series is building it from scratch, right? But each company, based on what they do, they kind of do it differently. I guess in the project that you're building, you keep it as like generic as possible so that it could be adjusted to other business models.
Yeah.
But where does the gap assessment land in this, let's say, approach? Let's say I'm a founder of a company, I want to get ISO certified, and then I come and see this series. I'm like, okay, we have Jira, we have Confluence, let me just watch this and start building it with David. But I'm going to do it without a gap assessment. Is this going to be like a obstacle?
No, I don't think it's an obstacle. Like at the end of the day, like what I'm building, yes, it's quite generic. At the same time, if you look at all of the information security systems, you get kind of, these pillars, or let's say these like things that usually companies build, because it's kind of like with one thing that you build, you can cover multiple of the controls and things. So I would say like I'm building fairly standard system, and the gap assessment, I mean, it will help you understand, okay, I just need to build maybe a part of the system because the other part I already have in my company. You can do it more or less yourself by, checking against the standard, what criteria you satisfy and what not. Ideally, you would book some consultation, like the gap assessment doesn't take that long. Usually, like it can be done within one day, sometimes even, a few hours. What we are also building at Audit One is, let's say, AI agent, where you can chat with it, and you can also, like, we will make it privacy compliant so that, the data that you share with the agent doesn't leave anywhere, can be completely deleted. And the idea there is you could also then upload your policies, your documents, and it can perform, let's say, a short audit based on what you have, identify the gaps. And then you can either use it, at the beginning as a gap assessment, but you can also use it as internal audit for yourself, just to check whether or not you are satisfying the criteria now or not. Yeah.
Got it. All right, interesting stuff. And so let's just start wrapping it up, because this is getting quite long, I guess. If you wanted to give 3 do's, like very short answer, 3 do's and 3 don'ts for ISO 27K, what would they be?
3 ones, yeah? Okay, so 3 do's. Let's do 3 do's first. So first of the do's will be involve the leadership. So it has, like, in the startup, it's not a problem. Usually you have the co-founders, founders, C-level people involved directly in it. Bigger companies, they kind of tend not to have that much touch points with it, but they definitely should be involved. So involve leadership. Keep it simple. Like, don't overcomplicate your policies. Don't just build it to match whatever you are current, like whatever your current, level of complexity and maturity of the company is. So if you're a startup, make the processes as you would do them in startup. If you're a big corporation, of course, you will have like super detailed processes. And then also train employees, like make sure everyone understands why are you doing it, everyone understands what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and kind of build up this culture, this information security culture. And the don'ts, I think we discussed it a little bit, so I would just probably repeat myself. It would be like, it's not just IT only project. It's also not, just copy pasting stuff. So like build your own policies. Don't just, copy paste something from somewhere else, like adjust it to yourself. And today with like all those LLMs and other tools, I don't see like why you should just copy paste something. Like it's so easy to make your own documentation policies. And I think the last don't is like, it doesn't stop with the certification. So even after certification, continue with it. But I think, by the time that you actually go for the certification, you do the audits, you have implemented all of this and you worked on it for 6 months. I don't have to tell you that, don't stop after certification. I think you will be much very well aware of, this is not just one-off thing. I need to stay compliant in the long run. So because every year then you have the recertification audits, so you will naturally just want to actually keep your certificate, and so you will continue working and using the system that you built and improving it.
Got it. All right. Do you have any last notes or remarks for the people who are viewing this video?
I think if anyone is listening to the podcast, and you need some help, or you are just unsure whether or not you should do the ISO or shouldn't do the ISO, and you are scared of the costs, then I would say, if you don't looking at the ISO is always really, really good. It gives you the best practices. I think there is no reason why companies shouldn't just, learn from the best practices of the standard. You can learn from it yourself. With consultant, it's much faster, but you can do it yourself, right? And the certificate, if you don't need it, then you don't have to get it, right? But just make sure that your company follows best practices, is secure, and if you need, just to talk to somebody and get a little bit advice on what is ISO, how does it work, how can I implement it, and so on. Also on the price and the timeline, I'll be happy to have a short call and we can go over all of these topics. Yeah. But most important for me is actually that companies go and become as secure as possible, because I saw the aftermath of different incidents, and it's just much easier and much cheaper, to build a system than to face the consequences at some point.
Got it. All right, so we're gonna leave a link to booking a call with you in the description of this podcast or video, or however the viewers are watching it or listening to it. And I guess it's a good point to wrap this up. Thank you very much to everyone who stuck around with us until the end of it. I know this is a long one. I don't know how long it will be because we will have to cut some parts. But anyway, thank you very much for sticking with us. And David, if you want to say goodbye to the viewers or listeners, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for sticking around until the end of this recording. And make sure to follow us on our social media channels and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to check out the ISMS series, Building It From Scratch, of course, as David mentioned. And if you want to learn more about how to implement it yourself, or if you have any questions, make sure to check out the link below and book a call with David. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye-bye.